Witches, drug dealers, ex-Nazis. Do you know what sounds like somewhere where I used to work when I first started in television? Well, those are just some of the characters, though, our next guest came across when he decided to set off for the Americas in the footsteps of his great-grandfather.
Well, the result of his journey is this book. It's called The Mango Orchard, and it's the story of how Robin Bayley gave up his career and rediscovered his great-grandfather's life, as well as 300 relatives he didn't know he had. Robin's here with us in the studio. Hi, Robin.
Hi there.
There is a great quote on the back of this book. Why did you come and look for us if you didn't know we were here? So why did you? What set you off on this adventure?
Well, I set off on the adventure because of the stories which I had been told by my grandmother when I was a child, and she told me these incredible stories about her father, my great-grandfather, and about his time in Mexico. And I just thought, there's something here I'm not being told. And so I left my job, I sold my flat, and I went to go and see what he'd left behind.
That was some hunch, wasn't it?
Absolutely, and he does look like a bit of a character. Let's take a look at him here, because what we have to remind ourselves is this is an Edwardian Lancashireman called Arthur, and yet he's got this sort of, how can I put it, superhero other character as Arturo, the wild Mexican. Am I correct?
Well, yeah, and you can imagine if you saw that when you're a child, of course you're going to have all these wonderful images, and you can see that he's got a sword, and I just imagine him cutting his way through jungles, and he had a bag of what I imagine to be silver on the back. And he had a gun. So he was this wonderfully romantic figure for me. And I say, because of the stories that I was told, I just thought there's something that I need to go and find.
So there was a hunch that there might be something. Did you ever imagine that it would lead to this whole mystery family, all 300 of them?
No, absolutely not. And not only did I not know anything, but no one in this country knew. Not my grandmother either. She thought it would be great for me to go and see where he had lived and worked. Didn't perhaps quite understand what it meant to me. But what I managed to do, bit by bit, because all I knew that he'd lived in a small village outside a small town, somewhere not too far from Guadalajara. That's all I knew. I managed to track down the village where he'd lived, and the factory where he was is now a museum, and I went in and I said, I'm looking for evidence of my great-grandfather, and they jumped up and down and said that the whole village is called that when I said his name. And they said, do you want to meet some of your relatives?
Wow.
And it was this surreal thing.
Wow.
Like you're walking through treacle.
It's a lot of them.
Yeah, well, that's just a small portion of them.
He was a busy man, wasn't he? How long was he there for?
He was there for 14 years.
14 years, well, he just...
So we had the family that we've seen just a small part of the generations down the line there. What took him away from them? What brought him back to the UK?
Well, as Gareth said, he was from Lancashire. He was in the cotton industry, so that's why he went to Mexico to work in a cotton mill, to run a cotton mill. And then working in the same mill that he was managing was a beautiful young Mexicana called Maria, and well, from that came the family you've just seen the picture of. So anyway, I met these guys, and this surreal moment, stood in front of this house knocking on the door, and the door opens, and this guy's standing there, and I'd never met him before, but I recognized him. And I've heard myself, so, you know, it's like somebody else saying the words, you don't know it's yourself. And I said, in very polite Spanish, good afternoon, my name's Robin, I'm from England, and I think you're my uncle. And he just looked at me and said, you better come in then.
How did your grandmother respond to this? Because obviously a secret world in Mexico, as Ginny was saying, you know, a huge family you'd never heard of, and suddenly your grandmother is confronted with the fact that her father had begotten, well, whatever you want to say, a whole generation.
Well, exactly. Initially, as you can imagine, she was absolutely horrified. In fact, she sent me a fax to Mexico saying, I don't believe they are his descendants. I think they moved into his house and took his name.
Oh, bless.
And I came back to his country. I went to go and see her in a Sheffield home, and it was a role reversal. I was showing her the photographs and telling her the stories like she had when I was a kid. And then eventually she just took me to one side and said, let's go.
Amazing.
So just after her 90th birthday, I took her to Mexico, and we had a a big fiesta.
Fantastic. And the great news is, we're almost out of time, but the lovely end to this is that she actually did live to see the book published, didn't she? She knew that it was going to be a story that everyone would share.
Well, exactly. I mean, when I was writing, she kept on saying, hurry up. And she read it, and I told her it was going to be published and told her it would be dedicated to her, and then a couple of days later she died.
It's a wonderful story. What an adventure. Boyhood adventures and dreams come true, really.
And not an unhappy ending, because she did live to be almost 102, which is a very good innings. Well, thank you, Robin. It's time for us to take a break. Don't go away. One of the UK's great adventurers will be joining us with tales of Everest.
And we'll have details of our fabulous competition. You could be going to Ecuador. We'll see you in just a tick.